If a cop pulls you over and says, if you don't have anything to hide, let me take a look in there, and you say, yes, you just gave away for free a right the Constitution hands you. That's right. Police count on the fact that 90% of people don't know how to respond in that moment, and they use that exact phrase to get you to give up your Fourth Amendment rights without even realizing it. I've seen drivers lose their car, get arrested, and even get convicted because of one word said wrong during a traffic stop. And today I'm going to give you the exact phrase, short, polite, and legal sense that you can use to protect your rights without turning the stop into a fight. Stay until the end, because part 3 of this video could be the difference between you walking away or leaving in handcuffs. Before we continue, hit like and subscribe to the channel, because every week I bring you a right nobody ever taught you, one the police hope you never find out about.
Let me tell you something that happens all the time on American roads, from Los Angeles to Orlando. You get pulled over at a checkpoint, or during a routine stop for speeding, a broken headlight, anything small. The officer walks up, asks for your license and registration, and after a conversation that seems totally casual, he drops that line. If you don't have anything to hide, let me take a look inside the car. Sounds innocent, right? Even sounds friendly, like an invitation. But that sentence completely changes the nature of the stop. Up until that moment, it was a normal traffic stop. From that question on, it's a request for consent to search. And under American law, that makes all the difference.
There's a very clear line between an informal conversation with the officer and legal authorization to search your vehicle. The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. That means, in most situations, the officer needs a legal basis, probable cause, a warrant, or your consent to search your vehicle. And that's exactly where the problem lies. Many people, in the heat of the moment, feel an almost automatic urge to prove they haven't done anything wrong. It's instinctive. You think, if I say no, he's going to think I'm hiding something. That thought is completely human, but it leads you in the wrong direction. Because here's the truth. You don't need to prove your innocence by giving up a constitutional right. No law in the United States requires you to demonstrate that you're an honest person by allowing a voluntary search of your car. That's the point a lot of people forget in the moment. Pulled over on the side of the road, heart racing, with an officer staring at you, waiting for an answer. And it's exactly in that tense moment that the question comes straight at you. Can I take a look in your car? No preamble, no explanation. Just that short phrase, waiting for a yes or a no. And this is where most people freeze, because saying no feels like admitting guilt, feels rude, feels like it's going to make things worse. But what a lot of people don't know is what actually happens the moment you say yes, and why that impulsive answer tends to be the biggest mistake a driver makes during a police stop. So let's get straight to the point. Why do so many people answer sure, go ahead, exactly when they should say no? The answer is simple. It's a reflex, wanting to look cooperative. Nobody wants to be seen as the difficult or suspicious driver on the side of the road, with cars going by and everyone supposedly watching. There's a social pressure there, even if nobody else is really paying attention. And the brain, on autopilot, interprets refusal as something that's going to cause trouble, when in reality, it's exactly the opposite. Here's the detail that changes everything. When you voluntarily consent to the search, you eliminate any future argument about whether that search was legal or not. This is serious. Later, in court, if your lawyer tried to challenge the search, the prosecutor's answer would be simple. The driver authorized it. End of story. It doesn't matter if the officer had probable cause. It doesn't matter if there was a warrant. None of that gets argued because you opened the door yourself. And it's important to understand a fundamental difference here. It's one thing to comply with a lawful order, like handing over your driver's license when asked. That's a legal obligation required under the traffic code of practically every American state. It's a completely different thing to voluntarily agree to a request, like allowing a search of the vehicle. That's not an obligation at all. It's your choice and yours alone. The officer, though, will often keep pushing. He might say things like, if you don't have anything to hide, what's the problem? Or, this will just take a second, just a quick look. That phrase is designed to mess with your head, to make it seem like refusing is a sign of guilt. But think about it. A constitutional right doesn't stop being valid just because someone makes you feel uncomfortable about using it. You have the right to drive with your windows rolled up, you have the right to lock your house, and you have the right to say no to a search. None of these rights require justification. And here's the most important warning in this part. Trying to argue with the officer to convince him you're innocent is almost always a bad strategy. You're not in a courtroom, there's no judge there to weigh your arguments, and anything you say can be used against you later. The more you talk, trying to explain yourself, the more information you hand over, and the greater the chance that something you say gets misread or taken out of context down the line. There's a right answer for this moment, short, calm, and one that leaves no room for confusion. Here's the phrase you need to remember. When the officer asks, "Can I take a look in your car?" the answer is simple, short, and polite. I prefer not to consent to a search. That's it. No yelling, no getting worked up, no crossing your arms like you're challenging someone. You say it the same way you'd say, "No thank you" to someone trying to sell you something on the street. Calm, direct, no drama. And notice the difference between that and arguing with the officer. Arguing would be saying, "You can't do this, this is illegal, you're violating my rights." That's confrontation, that's an accusation, and that can escalate the situation fast. Saying, "I prefer not to consent to a search," on the other hand, is simply exercising a right, the same way you exercise your right to remain silent. It's not defiance, it's not rudeness. It's a neutral, almost bureaucratic phrase that doesn't open the door to any kind of fight. The driver manages to protect their rights without turning it into a scene, and here's where a lot of people are surprised. You can be extremely polite with the officer. "Yes, sir," "No, sir," treating him with respect, and still refuse the search. One doesn't cancel out the other. Politeness and knowing your rights go hand in hand, they're not opposites. Now the officer might push back. He might ask again in a different way. "Are you sure? It won't take long." Or he might try to fish for a justification from you. "Why don't you want me to look if you don't have anything wrong?" And here's the trick. You don't need to give any reason at all. You shouldn't try to explain, justify, or convince. You simply repeat with the same calm, "I prefer not to consent to a search." No adding new information, no going into detail, no trying to argue the why. Every extra explanation you give is an open door to more questions, more pressure, and possibly more trouble. Think of it like a broken record, just a polite one. The officer asks one way, you answer. He asks another way, you answer the same thing. It's not stubbornness, it's consistency. And consistency, in this kind of situation, is what protects you. When you change your answer, hesitate, or start over-explaining, that's when things get muddled, both for you in the moment and later, if it turns into a bigger case. Keeping the same phrase, the same tone, is the safest way to get through that moment without complicating your situation. There's an even trickier situation you need to know how to handle. What if the officer says he's going to search the car anyway, with or without your permission? This happens. Sometimes the officer claims he has probable cause, or says he's going to call in a K9 unit, or simply says, "I have the authority to do this regardless." In that moment, it's crucial that you understand something. Refusing consent is not the same as physically resisting a search. Let's be very clear about this, because this is where a lot of people get confused and make a serious mistake. Saying, "I do not consent to this search" is a sentence. It's a verbal statement, protected by law, that serves to put on record that you did not give permission. Physically stopping the officer, trying to block the car door, pushing, shouting an argument, that's something else entirely, and that can land you in a much more serious situation, including a charge of obstruction or resisting, even if the original search was illegal. So if the officer states he's going to search anyway, what you do is, stay calm, don't touch the officer, don't try to hide anything, don't make sudden movements, and above all, don't turn it into a physical confrontation. You can repeat one last time, calmly, "I do not consent to this search, but I will not resist." That phrase is powerful because it puts on record, for any body camera or witness, that you held your legal position without putting anyone at risk. And here's something essential that a lot of people don't know. The legality of that search can, and should, be challenged later, not in that moment, on the side of the road. If the officer searched your car without your permission and without valid legal justification, that can be taken to a lawyer, challenged in court, and in some cases can even result in evidence found during that search being thrown out. But none of that gets resolved by arguing with the officer on the shoulder of the road. That's not the place or the moment to win that argument. Think of it this way. Your goal during the stop isn't to prove you're right. It's to get out of that situation safely, with your rights preserved as much as possible, so that afterward, calmly, you or a lawyer can look into whether something improper happened. Fighting it out in the moment rarely changes the outcome right there. and sometimes it only makes things worse. The problem, often, doesn't end the moment the officer lets you and the car go. What happens after the stop can be just as important as what happened during it, and that's exactly why you need to pay attention to a detail almost nobody thinks to do in the moment, remembering, as precisely as possible, exactly what was asked, what you answered, and whether at any point you did or didn't give consent for a search. As soon as the stop is over, if it's safe to do so, write it down on your phone or record a voice memo for yourself, describing everything in detail: the time, the location, what the officer said, word for word if possible, and how you responded. This might sound excessive, but memory fades over time, and these details can make all the difference later, especially if it turns into a legal case. And here's a distinction a lot of people don't understand. There's a huge difference between a search based on consent and a search carried out under some other legal justification, like probable cause or a warrant. If you didn't consent, and the officer searched anyway, citing another reason, that reason can and should be examined by a lawyer afterward. They'll look at whether that probable cause really existed, whether the procedure was followed correctly, and whether your rights were respected. That's a lawyer's job, not something you settle by arguing with the officer on the spot. And this is the most important point of all. The average driver should not try to win the argument on the side of the road. That's not the goal. The goal is to get out of that situation safely with your rights preserved without creating a bigger problem than the one that already existed. Trying to prove you're right there, arguing with an officer who is armed and in a position of authority at that moment, rarely ends well, and sometimes turns a simple situation into a much bigger mess. At the end of the day, being polite with the officer and knowing your rights aren't incompatible. You can treat everyone with respect, say sir or ma'am, stay calm, and still protect what's legally yours. Knowing exactly what to say and what not to say before anything happens is far more powerful than trying to explain yourself after the situation is already underway. Because in the end, it's not about proving you have nothing to hide, it's about knowing clearly and calmly what your rights are and how to use them without fear. If this video helped you understand a right nobody ever explained to you, hit like right now. It helps a lot more people see this content and find it before they need it. And if you live in the United States, or you have someone in your family who drives around, subscribe to the channel now, because every week I bring you another right that most people find out about too late, usually at the worst possible moment. Share this video with someone you know who drives every day. It could be exactly the information that protects them during their next stop.